All right, I think I can bring on our first speaker of the day. You guys are going to be very excited if you have never heard him talk. He has been a researcher for a very, very long time. He is one of the ranked veterans in our field, and he is a phenomenal researcher and speaker. He is also the recipient of the Leeds Conference International Researcher of the Year and the UFO Congress Researcher of the Year awards. He became involved in ufology as the Vietnam War ended back in 1975 with personal sightings of UFO type objects, which locally became known as Charlie Red Star. He researched early work done by the Canadian government into the flying saucer phenomenon, the UFO role of ex-Penn State President Dr. Eric Walker, and the role of the President of the United States in the UFO mystery. After experiencing a mental download event in February of 2012, he turned his research interests away from nuts and bolts research to the role of consciousness in the UFO phenomenon. He has some new books, including Breakthrough, The Psilocybin School, The Canadian Government UFO Story, UFOs and Triangles, and Contact Modalities. He'll be talking about his theory of wow, which looks at what UFOs may be and what they may be doing. He will review some UFO videos and look at the metamaterial controversy. He will present the latest on portals. I can't even tell you how excited I am about this part, including videos of a portal and being taken in daylight, along with one of the wildest UFO encounter stories that you will ever hear. Please join me in welcoming Grant Cameron.
Well, thank you very much for that intro. And thank you for the invite to the virtual UFO conference. I've been to Ozark many times, and this is kind of a letdown because Ozark is one of the Eureka Springs is one of the finest places there is. So let me share my, get this mask off first. And let me share my screen here, and we will get to the presentation. But first, I want to show a video. We are having trouble playing my videos. So I want to play a video. This is a video that was taken by Chris Bledsoe. And he sends me a lot of videos. He has, I believe, I think the figure was 15,000 videos. He's actually being provided cameras now. And this one he sent, I think it was just taken last weekend or maybe, and then I'll explain to you why. Now, when you first look at it, you're going to say, oh, this is, you know, the moon, Grant, come on. So I'll say, whatever your skeptical left brain interpreter says, hold that monkey mind thought because the moon is about to move. There's actually, I don't know if the video is that clear, but there's actually an object comes in from the top, crosses over the main object. And he told me what kind of camera. It escapes me. He's using a special type of camera. It crosses over, here it comes. And then there's an object that that comes in from the right, from the bottom right. And Chris is high-end contactee. CIA has been watching him, NASA, and they're trying to figure out why does this guy have this very high level of contact. The important thing I want to sort of point out, this is a 2-minute video. I'm going to play it right through, and then I'm going to go to my presentation. So here's the moon, the object here. Now the moon will start moving. And I want you to see how this thing disappears, because this gets into the whole portal issue. I maintain that this thing is not flying away. It's collapsing inside itself. It actually will stay in one spot, brighten up, and then it'll just sort of go less until it sort of disappears. So, and he has his daughter behind him and his nieces there while they're filming this object. So here it comes across, it's going across the tree. And I have a lot of videos. I was going to play them, but I'm going to explain why I'm only going to play one video. But Chris has a lot of videos. And some of them are really good like this. I mean, he has almost daily contact. I had an experience with him when I was there. Doug Alt had an experience. Anybody who goes to his place usually has some sort of bizarre experience, contact experience. So because I have seen him do this kind of stuff, I know he's the real deal. Now watch how this thing sort of just fades, and it's gone. It's like it's either flying directly away or it's collapsing in itself. Now, this is, let me go to my presentation here. And what I want to talk about is some of the latest material. I have so much material. It's unbelievable. There must be some sort of thinning of the veil. I'm going to go through all this, and then at the end, we're going to do the portal thing, and I'm going to talk about what I think may be the best contact case, best UFO case I've ever seen. Happened last August at Mount Shasta, California. So I'm going to tell a bunch of stories, and I'm going to talk about this, the theory of wow. When I had my sightings in 1975, the first night it flew right in front of the car. It was not a light in the sky. It was an object right in front of the car, bobbing up and down, very low to the ground. The second night it flew directly at us, made a left-hand turn, flew off. And I remember saying to myself, that could be something from another planet. And then I'm thinking, but what's it doing? It's not doing anything. It's just flying along. And for some reason, I've had a lot of noetic experiences where I sort of get stuff that comes to me usually when I'm walking. And this theory of wow came to me. I'm not sure how it came to me, but the more I look at it, the more I think this may answer a lot of the UFO questions. So here's the theory of wow. And the reason I showed you the video, because a lot of people are hung up in videos. They're hung up in the nuts and bolts. They're hung up into the whole idea of seeing stuff, being entertained. In the late 19th century, we used to have seances where people wanted to go and they would, do the seance thing and try to talk to dead people. And now it's sort of the UFO thing that I think that a lot, even in the UFO community, a lot of people are just into the entertainment value. So at some point, maybe I'll get Chris to do a presentation just of his videos, because he could go probably for 2 hours with the best videos he's got. But the theory of wow basically says that they really are doing something different than what we think they're doing. This is Bob Bigelow, Robert Bigelow, who actually ran Skinwalker Ranch. He bought the ranch and held it for a number of years. Now they had everything there. They had cattle mutilations, they had UFO sightings, they had orbs, they had portals, they had apportation stuff where stuff would appear and disappear and stuff. And when he said this, he was just in an interview with George Knapp. This is what he said. It's all about messages. It's all about gaming and messages. That was his conclusion after all of the events of Skinwalker Ranch over the years. When I heard him say that, I said, thank you, Jesus. That is the definition of the theory of wow. It's all about messaging. He also said, it's all about messaging. It's about instructional kinds of things. And when you start looking at the UFO phenomena, you basically see that there is this message. And Forrest talked about early, I have a new podcast called Paranormal UFO Consciousness Podcast. In there, I actually play, a couple days ago, I played an audio from Forrest. We were actually at Eureka Springs. And as Forrest mentions, it goes on all night. You're in hotel rooms or standing in the parking lot and talking to people. And this sort of event after the event. We were with Linda Howe, and Forrest and I and my assistant were in a hotel room. And Forrest started talking the story about him when he was a young child, having this dream of flying the craft. And this is where the consciousness things come in. And so I played that audio of Forrest talking about flying the craft. And I have a bunch of other people. I have a list of maybe 6 or 7 people on my podcast. Each day I play another one who flies the craft. So we have this consciousness aspect, and we have this aspect where people are talking about the fact that they think there's some sort of message, that this is what it is. And you start to look, they're not here to eat us. They're not here to take over. They just may be here to send us a message. And that comes to the idea of why I showed the UFO video. Why do UFOs have lights on them? Nobody ever thinks about this. Why does a UFO have lights on it? It has lights on it so you can see it. It wants you to see it. And like my experience in 1975, what is the UFO doing? It's not doing anything. It just lets you see it, and then it disappears. And it's to trigger you. It's to awake you. Now, this is an important part of what I've sort of discovered, and it seems to be more apparent the more I go on. But some of the aspects that was Forrest brought up at the beginning is this idea that consciousness is primary. So this is what Max Planck said. As a man and he's the guy that had won the Nobel Prize for the quantum atom idea. As a man who has devoted his entire life to the most clear-headed science, the study of matter, I can tell you that as a result of my research about atoms, this much: there is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibrate and holds this minute solar system together. We must assume behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. That is the number one thing that I think people have to understand in the UFO phenomena, is this is not going to be as physical as people think. It has this very clear consciousness connection to what is going on. That's the one thing. Mary Rodwell spoke yesterday, and this is one of Mary Rodwell's kids in Australia. His name is Seth. This is probably the most important research I've seen in many, many years. This is the idea where they can teach you to see through a blindfold, and you can hear a mile away. And this goes, as soon as I saw this research, I said, oh, this is critically important, because this is the whole idea about near-death experiences. If you're in a near-death experience and you're seeing with your eyes taped shut, how are you seeing what the doctor's doing, what the doctor looked like, or what where the doctor went and what they did to you, unless you have sight? So Seth, we had an experiment with him where he was on camera, and I stuck my tongue out at him, and he started laughing, and he did targets. He hit every single target. He's driven a car. He's done all this kind of stuff. This is extremely important research that indicates sight is not what you think it is. The brain sees, or the mind sees. It's not the eyes that are seeing, and that we can bypass these sort of things. These are the things I think we have to sort of pay attention to in the UFO field, that the UFO stuff is much more complex than people think. It's going to be much less physical, much more spiritual, and 1,000 times more complex than what people think. Now, here's a crop circle. This is one of the messages I got. This is Chris Bledsoe's alien. It's absolutely his alien. This is what has the code message in there. It says, beware of false promises, this sort of thing. This appeared in a crop circle. This is exactly the being that Chris Bledsoe saw in his 2007 experience. And I got the message at that point, and Chris sent me the message, and he said, the message is in the music. At which point I laughed, because it didn't have anything to do with music. But I've started to I get these messages, and I follow, and that was the book. Now, what I'm going to talk about at the end, I'm going to talk about Mount Shasta. This is a door that appeared, a door crop circle that appeared a couple of years back. And as that happened, there was a remote viewer picked up a target at Mount Shasta, which was a door in the side of a mountain. And it was given a remote viewer the target, and it was found shortly before this crop circle appeared or after. It was basically the same time, within days of this sort of thing. And so I got involved with Mount Shasta, and I'm going to talk about this. And a lot of people say I hype it because it's like an ET center where you can go, like a Disneyland thing. And it's not really. There's events happen there, but there's some very bizarre events happen there. It doesn't mean that if you go there to one of these Mission Rama events or these contactees who gathered there, or CE5 people, that you're going to see stuff. But I've been there twice, and bizarre stuff has happened both times I'm there. And the most dramatic event I saw ever happened in August of last year. So this door event, this door. It's an actual door in the side of the mountain. It looks like a door. It was given by remote viewing. And so I went there, and I went to the door, and people do this meditation thing, and they see stuff inside the mountain. It's just it gets really, really weird. These groups of 100 to 150 people appear, mostly Spanish people, Latino people from Mexico and the Western United States. And that led to two books. So the one was my 2017 experience, and one was 2019 experience. I went to these events. I didn't really want to go. They wanted me to go to meditate for world peace on the side of a mountain, which I had no interest whatsoever. And so I went there, and these events happen. And this is where these portal Zendra things have occurred, which I've spent a lot of time on, which I'll talk about at the very end. Now, getting back to the theory of wow, and what you see at these events, these CE5 events, why would a UFO appear? It's like it appears, it wants you to see it, it flies off, and it really doesn't do anything. when I get to the theory, wow, I have a difference in opinion on almost everything. And some people get sort of offended. Like I say, Travis Walton, why did they take Travis Walton for 5 days? I say it's theory of wow. Like, I mean, it's like, did the tall gray forget, how to take the sperm, or did they, the idea was they killed him and had to bring him back to life? I said, no, the reason they took him for 5 days is they said, wow, man, would people go, wow, if he did this? Travis Walton is famous, I say, primarily because of one thing, not because of what he saw on the craft or what happened. He is primarily famous because he was gone for 5 days. If Travis Walton hadn't been gone for 5 days, you never would have heard of Travis Walton. It's almost like the theory of Jesus, that if Jesus hadn't fed people, 5,000 people, if he hadn't walked on water and healed people and stuff like that, you never heard of Jesus. I call it the circus. And people get offended by this, but it's true. What the phenomena does is it causes the circus, which gets your attention. Then they give you the message. They give you the message first. You aren't going to pay attention. So Travis Walton was taken for 5 days, and he may be right about what he thinks happened, or people have this impression. I think it's just, no, they want it. And here's the because what people want is they want something very dramatic. So when you look at the Skinwalker Ranch, when you see the video for the Skinwalker Ranch, you basically see that you get attention. And you know this if you go to conferences where you're talking on consciousness, you can have 40 people in the room, and across the hall, people are doing whatever crazy, theory stuff. And if it's fear-based, they'll have 600 people in the room. This is how it works. It's like a Hollywood movie. So at the beginning of the whole hunt for the Skinwalker is this thing. Due to graphic nature of this film, viewer discretion is advised. And everybody goes, oh, I'm going to watch this. And people get all excited, and they start watching the video. And of course, how does the video start? It starts with cattle mutilations. And so when I talk about cattle mutilations, I always say the same thing. I said, okay, we may not know exactly why they're doing it. Some people think it's a monitoring thing because it's downwind and downstream from nuclear power activities. But what you see with the cattle mutilation is, I say, when you take the cow, and they got the cow in the ship and they fly off, and they do whatever they do to the cow, and they don't take the whole cow, they only take a little bit. There's very dramatic stuff that they know everybody's going to film when they drop it. And why do you fly back into the war zone and drop the cow from 100 feet into the farmer's front yard? Because they want you to see it. This is a message. This is whatever the message is. They want it. And I always say, like, why would they take all the blood out of the cow? They take the blood, every single last drop of blood out of the cow, because if they don't, you're going to say, it's nothing. Everybody goes like, how did they get the blood out of the cow? How did they do this? Or they took a heart out of the one cow without an incision, a 9x11 heart. They took it out of the cow and there was no incision. That's the kind of stuff where people go, wow. And all they want you to do is go, wow, what is going on? The world is not as physical as I think it is. Something's going on, and they're saying, no, there's more to the world than the physical world. Pay attention, and they want you to figure it out. They want me to figure it out. They're not going to drop on the White House lawn and tell you what's going on. They want you to figure it out yourself. And so they use this circus thing. Sometimes it's called the trickster, where they use this trickster sort of thing to get your attention. Now, here was my sighting, as I mentioned before. It came at me in front of the car, and when I saw it, I wanted this question of what's going on. Somebody's got to know what's going on. And I came to the conclusion now that all this was a trigger for me to figure out not so much what are UFOs, but how does reality work? Because this should not have happened. What I saw should not have happened in the physical world. And it started on this pursuit. They just recently, you'll see they've just released these videos. They were leaked through George Knapp on triangles. I did a whole book on triangles, and I go like, man, this is pretty cool. And now we're doing triangles. So why would they have triangles? If you take a look, they have these things, and they fly over the military, over the Navy, and I say that's basically messaging to them that we've had enough. They're interacting. They want the Navy to see it. The Nimitz I'll get to in a second. Here's a prime example. This is a story that was told where the thing lands, and the guy comes up and he gives him a cup, and he says, "Can you get me some water?" So really, I mean, he came across the galaxy, and he can't get his own water. These are the kind of weird sort of stories that when I look at the story, I look at the weird part of the story, like, what are they really doing? This doesn't make any sense that they would fly and then have to get somebody to get them water. Sky watches. We spend a lot of time doing sky watches. What I say sky watches is basically a cat with a laser. Like we're chasing these things around and we're documenting them and stuff like that. And it's like the cat. And so the investigator cat comes in and says, so what do you see? Oh, I saw this red dot. How big was it? Oh, it was like at arm's length. How big was it? And you describe it. How far did it move? It moved across the room. How fast? Oh, it was moving the speed of light. And we measure. Come on, let me measure this. And we're measuring and we're viewing and whatever. And in the end, it's basically we are like a cat chasing around a laser. When you have the Phoenix light sighting, then you have multiple cats chasing the thing, and we get the whole place going crazy. And basically, we really don't understand what's going on. This is just something that's played for us, and we are just reacting to it. It's getting our attention. Here's we're still doing this. This had just come out, it was sent to me, and it's the old deal. It's like we're how many what's the size of the object you saw, what's the color, and it's like what difference does it make? It's like because I had two sightings myself, one in 75, one in 76, where the object came at me. It was one object when it started, it was a different object when it arrived. It completely changed shape, size, everything. And so we're still doing this kind of stuff, tracing colors and sizes. And that will tell you one thing. Yes, it will tell you, yeah, something's going on. And it probably isn't our stuff, but it really doesn't tell you anything about anything. You have to actually, when you want to get down to it, you got to talk to the people who are interacting with the intelligence behind the phenomena. There is an intelligence. Everybody admits it, but you got to talk to people. Stuff in the sky is just simply theory of wow. It's just getting your attention, getting you to look, and then flying off, and then you go down the rabbit hole as Forrest and I and a lot of other people do. You see a UFO, and that's it. Your whole life is consumed with this thing, and it may be a pre-birth thing where we have agreed to come in and at this time in this place to do this kind of stuff. Now the mass sighting, you have the Phoenix light thing. And I always say, because we had a joke in Canada, what was the UFO doing? We said, oh, it was picking up beer, because we had Canadian beer was a lot stronger than American beer. And we're right at the border. So we said, they're come pick up Canadian beer, and they're taking it back to the United States. And so why would the mass sighting in Phoenix be a triangle craft a mile wide? Like, why do you need a craft that's that big or 2 miles wide? People will describe these things 2 miles wide. Why do you need it that big? They just want you to go, wow, did you see the size again? It was unbelievable. It covered the whole sky. That's the theory of wow. So they have these triangles all around the world. They have these lights on them. Mine had two red lights on the front, and green light on the back, and it was flying backwards. A lot of people described the UFO flying backwards. It was flying backwards towards me, and that was just bizarre. It's like, oh, why is it flying backwards? And it's to get your attention. Jason Paget, who was, he had a brain injury. He was beat up in a bar. A lot of people, and this is a woman here and locally where I am, has triangles. And one morning she woke up with triangles on both wrists. This is the one triangle on the one wrist, and the other one was completely red. It didn't have the lines in it. It was completely red. And she came to me and said, what's going on? I need to know. She's obsessed with these triangles. So why are they doing these triangles? And you'll see that a lot of people, I can't remember what percentage, a very high percentage of experiencers will find marks on their body. Now what is this, a propulsion thing? What do you have to put a triangle on your arm? The reason they put triangles on your arm is they want you to go, no, that wasn't a dream. I would have put this triangle. Why do they put people's shirts inside out and backwards? People say, oh, the aliens are stupid. They can't put shirt on. No, they put it inside out and backwards. So no, this wasn't a dream, this thing that you experienced. Because a lot of it appears to happen in dreams. As Forrest Crawford talked about his experience flying the craft. It appeared to be that it was this dream that he had over and over as a child. And Jason Paget, interestingly, said, and we're doing an interview, we've talked to him, he says everything in the universe is made out of triangles, circles, everything is made out of triangles. It is the primary shape. So that may be why the people, the aliens or whoever they are, seem to have this obsession with triangles. They appear all over the place. And I think it's the theory of wow. Now, this is, a lot of people will come up with different conclusions, and I call it the left brain interpreter. If you read my book, Contact Modalities, I talk about this breaking through into the field, that you have a left brain interpreter in your left brain. It's Dolores Cannon used to call it Mr. Stupid. It will come up with all sorts of crazy explanations, because when the world becomes inconsistent, you got to fill the hole, and it immediately fills the hole. And one thing we know about this skeptical thing, it's where skepticism comes from. It's always wrong, according to the guys that did the research in the Nobel Prize winning lab. It's always wrong, and you can never change it. Once a person makes a decision, oh, that's just an illusion, that's whatever, they'll never change it. They can explain to these people in these lab experiments they did that they were wrong, why they picked it, and they still won't believe it. So that's an important thing to remember, that we have this skepticism thing that always tries to fill the hole. When you look at all this phenomena, whether it's lights in the sky or whatever, I always say it's the idea of take a closer look. What is it really? It appears to be one thing, but when you look closer, it appears to be something else. Here's the whole thing about the metals. The Canadian government was very much involved in metals. This is a piece that they had. They were trying to saw a piece off this thing, and with breaking the saw blades and stuff like that. And so the Canadians had this stuff that was dropped. 3,000-pound piece just appeared in this giant explosion off the St. Lawrence River. There's 3 big pieces there, and they picked it up. Now, would they fly across the universe and suddenly, have a crash or whatever? Or as is said by Bob Bigelow, I believe they're seeding this stuff. I believe there's a crash in here, one in China, one in Russia. They're seeding this stuff. And if you've listened to Tyler D., who is the NASA guy, top NASA guy, he calls it the gifting field. That all the stuff we're getting, these crashes, are less. They're not crashes, they're actually being dropped, and that's the theory. This is the 1952 piece. Wilbur Smith talks about a small piece being shot off a flying saucer outside of Washington. So did it actually fly it off, or did they drop this little piece? I keep saying, no, they're dropping this stuff. This is a port. This is apportations. This is manifestations. This is to get you to go, wow, what's going on here? And you've got this metal. And all you can tell from the metal is that it's probably not made on Earth. It has weird isotopes, all this sort of stuff. But where does it get you? It doesn't tell you how to fly a flying saucer. It doesn't tell you where it's coming from, who they are, what the message is. It just says, hey, this is pretty weird. This is, wow, I mean, this is not coming from here. There's no way we can make this kind of stuff. And this is Wilbur Smith, the guy around the Canadian Flying Saucer Program, talking about sending this piece back. And he said it was sent higher than the CIA, but he would not reveal what it is. Here's a piece. I've got the Stanton Friedman files here in Canada. I'm going to go back there again once the COVID thing is over. Here's a piece of metal. And I told him, I said, you better cover this piece of metal. This is a piece that was sent to Stan. I don't think it was ever analyzed. It was just taped to a thing, and they had it in the archives box. I said, you need to seal this thing off. Someone's going to walk off of this thing. They see this. So now if you go to the Stanton Friedman files in New Brunswick, you actually have to have an archivist when you see this piece of metal. But I don't think it's ever been analyzed. And this kind of stuff is in Stan's files that he never really sort of, analyzed. He had so much material, millions of pages. I think one estimate said that they're talking 10 years to go through all his material and actually file all the audios, the videos, the documents and stuff like that. Here's one that we got. This is my assistant and I. We found this in McDonald's files at the University of Arizona. This is a piece that was dropped in 1939. It was seen coming out of the sky like a meteor. It dug itself into the soil. It was red hot. All people describe the same thing. It's molten. It's red hot when it hits the ground. And he dug it out. And in 1967, his daughter was living in Tucson, and NASA had a lab there because we're going to the moon. And she took it to the lab to get it analyzed. And all they could determine was it's very weird. It's 99% pure nickel. And it has this core, this very small core, because it cut off the end of it. And they discovered there was this core of copper on the inside. Now, this came out of the sky. And again, it doesn't really tell you what it is, where it's from. It's just a theory of, wow, it's to go like, wow, look at this bizarre thing, 1939 already. Here's one that Chris Bledsoe made public. I'd heard about this for years. This is one. So, I mean, you got a crash. I mean, this is like a honeycomb type stuff. That the piece that I was actually, I think the government has possession of this piece that Chris held and had this photograph, and you can see it's all bent up. So if it hits the ground, like what is it going to bend this metal? I mean, you hear these stories that you can take a sledgehammer and you can smash it with a sledgehammer and you can't affect it. You can shoot bullets, it'll deflect bullets or whatever, and then it hits the ground and it all falls apart, or it flies through across the galaxy and it comes into our atmosphere, and then little pieces start falling off a flying saucer. We have to take a closer look. What is really going on? What is this metal about? I say it's a theory of wow. I say they're dropping this material. I actually asked Hal Puthoff about this because in the lab in the 1970s, when they're doing remote viewing, they had these apport things up here. Edgar Mitchell's pin appeared in Uri Geller's ice cream. And when they went back to the lab, the back half of the pin fell in the room while they were talking, and Uri Geller was in the next room. These kind of weird things happen. Apportations, manifestations, all this kind of stuff. It's all to get your attention to say, wow, what's going on? This world is much more complex than you think it is, and to make you think about it. When I talk about the metal, I say it's just like taking catnip and the toy, the cat's toy. It just makes people go absolutely crazy. I mean, they think this is it. We're going to figure it out, and it will tell you, yes, this is not from this planet. This is not built here, but it doesn't tell you anything except to go, wow, something really weird is going on. This is Travis was taken for 5 days. I always refer to this one. I say this is the bull. This is not the bull, but this is a picture in Skinwalker Ranch. They had a bull that disappeared for 10 days. It was gone for 10 days, and then it suddenly reappeared on the edge of a field, a muddy field, and there was no footprints in the field. This cow just suddenly reappeared after 10 days. They had 4 bulls put in a locked trailer at Skinwalker Ranch. So the question is, why would the aliens come across the galaxy to put four bulls, prize bulls, squashed in like sardines inside a locked trailer that had been open for years? Why would they take, when the woman comes home and takes her groceries out of the bag and then goes to the next room and comes back in and the groceries are all back in the bag again? Why would they do that? They're trying to get our attention. They're trying to tell you something is weird. This is not the physical world you think it is. Here's Ryan Bledsoe. This is the son of Chris Bledsoe. And he talks about disclosure belongs to the phenomenon. Remember this. They're running the show. Disclosure belongs to them. They're going to disclose when they want to disclose, and not the government. I know for a fact, based upon intelligence contacts who did research at Skinwalker Ranch, that the phenomena messes with the military and they are powerless to capture it. George Knapp said those who were the most aggressive to the phenomena had the worst experiences. You had this story about these special forces guys at Skinwalker Ranch who were there and got the message, leave. You are not welcome. And they were terrified. Special forces guys, they went back to their apartments and stuff was flying, weird wine bottles flying across the room, smashing against walls. All the people they lived with moved out. They were terrified at what this was. This is one thing we got to remember. Whatever the phenomenon is, it's running the show. And it's basically says at Skinwalker Ranch, leave, you are not welcome, as if this is our property. Same as people talk about, oh, it's in our airspace. No, if anybody owns the airspace, nobody owns the airspace. But if anybody owns the airspace, they own the airspace. They were here first. This is the Skinwalker. I just mentioned this guy with the special forces. This is the hitchhiker thing. It involves with the Shasta thing, which I'll talk about at the end. Is the idea that people have the idea that when you have the UFO experiences, that it hitchhikes, it follows you home. Well, that happens with everything. It happens not only with UFO experiences. If you have a near-death experience, you will have, I think it's 60% of people will have paranormal events after they have a near-death experience. UFO, I remember I talked about experiences in the UFO phenomena. I asked Yvonne Smith, I said, how many people would have paranormal phenomena after they've had an abduction experience? And she sort of laughed. She said, like 99%. It's just the idea that it rips the veil. So when you have a near-death experience, it rips the veil and you suddenly are sensitive to that part of the universe that is not the physical world. But they now call it, this is one of these apport things, very interesting one, where Chris Bledsoe ran out of animal cookies. He has a lot of these apport things. A lot of people have these. He has these animal, and he goes to buy animal cookies. They eat animal cookies all the time. He's out. He goes to the store. He comes back, and his wife's all upset. So who put the animal cookies at the front door? This kind of stuff happens all the time, and it's just to get your attention and to make you start to investigate. Here's the Nimitz thing. The Nimitz situation. These objects were around for many, many days. Finally, they decide they're going to go after this thing. They've got it on the radar, and they send the F-18s out to scramble to investigate these things. And basically what I say happened is the intelligence is going, yeah, here they come. Okay, great, here they come. Zogar, you go over there and go under the water and make some big bubbles. And, oh, okay, I'll make some bubbles. And the F-18 goes flying across, and that's what they described. This thing was making these maneuvers, and there was this thing under the water and these giant bubbles, and they just got everybody's attention. And that's the thing, like that's what they're doing. They're trying to get the attention and then send a message. Now, I don't know what the message is to the military-industrial complex or whatever they're sending, the nuclear, because there's a lot of nuclear stuff in this carrier group. They seem to be very upset about nuclear stuff. But that's the thing. So they make this bubble thing, and everybody just tells the story about the bubbles under the water. This thing was under the water. And it's the theory of, wow, they're just trying to get your attention, do weird things. Here's one that Leslie Kane talks about, and I say all the phenomena is connected, whether it's paranormal physical medium, which is it's all the same thing. It's all breaking through this veil and getting in the other side. Leslie Kane talks about this thing where the hand comes across the table, where this sort of watery stuff comes up, and this table's in front of her, and this hand appears. And she's allowed to touch the hand. She's touched a number of times, and she said it's absolutely a physical hand. There's no doubt about it. It's got a temperature. It's the skin is very soft and stuff like that. And then the hand just bangs on the table to prove that it's a physical hand, and then it just sort of goes back into this water and disappears. That's the kind of stuff that sort of tells us that the world is not as physical as we really think it is, and that the other side can come into our world, take on a physical form, and then go back into wherever they came from. Now we get to the alien thing, and I always talk about the alien thing. So people talk about, these different breeds of aliens and stuff like that. When I always refer to the case, Journey of Souls. One of my big events in my life was seeing Dr. Michael Newton lecture publicly. He has an encounter. He's 35,000 regressions old that have been done through his life between life, where he take people in past life, let them die, take them in the spirit world. And the one he had where the devil comes, and he tells a story about the guy has the devil, and he says the devil's in the room. And he said, "What do you mean the devil? Like, wait, devil?" And the guy's, "No, he's there. Can't you see him?" And he's just freaking out. And Michael Newton really doesn't believe there's the devil. So he says, "Okay, so what's he look like?" "Oh, he's this leathery skin and these fiery eyes." And he says, "Yeah, really? Okay. So what's he wearing?" Like he's doing the old thing. Look a little bit closer. He's saying, "Okay, so what's he wearing?" And he says, "Well, he's got nothing below his waist." And then Michael Newton is basically saying, "Well, doesn't that seem strange to you? I mean, the devil's here, but he doesn't have a bottom half. It's just this sort of smoky stuff below there." He said, "Go into the future and tell me what it really is." And then he goes, "Oh, it's my spirit guide. He's got a mask on. I was in my last life, I was a fire and brimstone preacher, and I used to scare the living daylights out of people. And he's just showing me what it's like to do that." And that's the whole thing: is take a closer look. If it's weird, if suddenly you have an alien that you can see through or something like that, then you got to go like, what's really going on here? And that's what I do. So when I talk to an experiencer, I ask totally different questions. People will ask the question of did it probe you? Did it hurt? I always ask them the question. I go, "Hey, you're on the craft, yeah? You see an alien, yeah? Let me ask you, was it wearing any clothes?" "No, wasn't wearing clothes." "Didn't seem strange to you? It wasn't wearing any clothes?" "No, it wasn't." "Did it have any sex organs?" "No, almost every time. No, never done any sex." And they're raping our women, but they don't have a sex organ. And then I go, "Did it have a belly button?" "No." "Did it have nipples?" "No." "Did it have a mouth?" "No, not really. Had a sort of slit, but it wasn't a mouth. It was just." "And what about a nose?" "Well, just these two holes." "No, it wasn't really a nose." "Did it have ears?" "No, it didn't have any ears." And then it's like, well, what is this really? Is this really what you think it is? Is it a flesh and blood alien? Because if it is, it's missing a lot of different parts. And again, it's like, take a closer look at what it is. If you look in the 1890s, when this first thing started in the United States, they had these airships flying around, and people talked to these guys that were in these airships. So these airships are coming, and they said we're from Mars. And so they're wooden ships, and they got these big giant propellers and these big giant lights that would need huge batteries, and you would never be able to carry these size batteries in the 1890s. And they said they were from Mars, and everybody believed, yeah, these wooden ships came from Mars. And another one said it was from Mars. Here's one. This is the famous crash thing where the pilot was supposed to be from Mars, and then in this time period, everybody believed Mars had people on it. And so you go into the 1950s, and the aliens were claiming they were from Mars, Venus, Moon, Jupiter, and Uranus. The Canadian guy, the AFA, the guy that was the alien that was dealing with the Canadians, said he was from Uranus. And I remember the metallurgist said to me, "At no time did we ever believe this thing was from Uranus." I mean, this is crazy. But once we started to realize that Mars really probably didn't have anybody on it, or Venus or the moon or stuff like that, then suddenly they changed. And then suddenly they were from Zeta Reticuli and the Pleiades. And then once we got into multidimensional stuff, we started talking multidimensional. Now they're all from the 5th dimension, the 11th dimension. Or you can ask them, "Where are you from?" You wouldn't understand. If you don't know where you're from, you won't know where we're from. And they always sort of avoid that question. The question is, who are we really dealing with? Is it actually a flesh and blood alien that has come from another planet? A lot of things have changed. When in 60s, 70s, 80s, you had UFOs with windows in them, almost doesn't happen anymore. In the Betty and Barney Hill situation, now they're from Zeta Reticuli, and they had baseball hats on. They had these hats on. And so the question is like, so what, they got a baseball team on Zeta Reticuli? Like, why does an alien need to have a hat on? And take a closer look. Maybe there's something, it's almost like they're giving you clues that there's something weird in this thing that you should take a closer look. It's not really what you think it is. Here's the shadow figures. I remember I had shadow figures. Asked one experiencer family, have you experienced shadow? You want some photographs? And they give me some photographs. So here's a shadow being. And you take the shadow being. I asked the one that had a lot of shadow beings. I said, do you see the one with a hat? And he goes, yeah, I saw that one. It's like, so if you're a shadow being, why do you need a hat? This is the thing. It's this weird sort of thing that when you start looking closely at what we're looking at, it's not really what we actually thought it was beginning. Here's a very important. I've interviewed this guy a number of times. His name is Yossi Ronan. He's out of Israel. And he has this encounter. In fact, I just interviewed him 2 days ago again. He said, this is what the beings told him as to where they were from. The way you see us is defined by you. When we visit your world, we temporarily have a physical body defined in a certain way, but it is not the only form or the original essence in our dimension. There is no need for a physical body defined in your particular way as in yours. So they basically say that we can come in, we take on a physical body, and then we go back into wherever we're coming from. We don't need the physical body anymore. Take a closer look. What is it really? Here's Sherry Wild, who's spoken at Ozark. Sherry Wild, I asked everybody, did you ask the alien if he was an alien? And a lot of people have, and they basically says no. So she asked Da, because what happened was when she was going to publish this book, The Forgotten Promise, the publisher said, oh, you said he's from Andromeda. And she said, yeah, that's what he said. We can't be from Andromeda. He's a gray. He's a Zeta. He's got to be from Zeta Reticuli. And go ask him. So she goes back to Da and says, hey, you told me from here Andromeda. Like, well, what's the deal here? Where are you from? And he said, are you actually an alien? He said, that would not best describe the truth of who I am. Press further, he said, he used a gray Zeta body as it was more functional than a human body. And she said to him, well, quit using it because you're scaring the living daylights. You wipe my mind every time, and then you come and scares daylight. And I've had a number of people where you ask them, you say, are you an alien? And they say, well, no, not really. He said, this is what Sherry Wild was told, I am basically what you'd call an etheric being. I am a voyager on the universe. I'm a voyager of the universe, going where needed in service to the creator. So that's a bit different than the idea of aliens as to who this was. And hers is going to become a movie. It's one of the most famous stories, very involved. She's got a very clear recollection of a lot of the encounters she had. Here's Tajbar. This book by Mark Sims is just coming out. He has an experience at the C5 Stephen Greer event. The thing appears just to him, and he sees this thing, and he does the C5 protocol in the bedroom, and this being comes to him, tells him he's from 4,000 years ago on Earth, and this is his radio thing. You'll hear about this thing with the radios, that you have these. They're talking to these beings.
The red one.
It's called a C6 initiative. So, but he has this thing where he's talking to the being, and he describes him. He said, "Is he an alien? No. Does he have a mouth? No. Do you have a nose? No. Do you have ears? No. Did he have eyes? He was even missing his eyeballs. And did he have clothes? No. Do you have sex organs? No. Solid flesh and blood? No. You could see through him. Older. That was one of the things I always ask a being. If some person who's seen a being, I say to them, like I've had Betty Andreas in 1946, her and her husband. I asked her husband, I said, you saw him in 1946? Yeah. You saw him now? Yeah. Did he ever get any older? Like you're like 6 years old when you first started. Now you're like 80 years old. Did the alien ever get any older? And everybody else says the same thing. No. But then they say, and then the left brain interpreter comes in. Yeah, but aliens live a long time. And they sort of justify the fact that the alien never got any older. And the question is it actually an alien? Now here's Ron Johnson, who's had this, and he talks about this same thing I've experienced, is he asks them, what sex are you? And they never respond to what kind of sex they are. But he says when they're on the ship, he can tell. And a lot of people will say that. I'll say, if they didn't have any sex organs, how do you know if it was a male or female? And they always say the same thing. I just knew. I just knew it was a female. I knew it was a male. And that's the thing. It gives off this essence. They all look exactly the same, but you can tell what they are. This is a book that we helped publish. She spoke at Ozark as well, Nancy Tremaine. She had the experience with the reptilian. She tells us whole story about the reptilian. And then I go back and I go, hey, Nancy, you saw him in 1962? Yeah. He was on board the ship. You were on the ship when you were like 13 years old or 12 years old. Yeah. I said, what did he look like then? Oh, he was a human being. Had great. He had dark hair. So he's dark hair, and then he turns into this reptilian. So that's the deal. So he can actually become different beings or take on different bodies. And she asked him, "Are you an alien?" We are not alien to this planet or any planet, as we have always been here. And they give these sort of elusive answers as to who they actually are. We've always been here. This is Chris Butsos. He starts as a 7-foot bluish green being in 2007. And that was, as I said, you can see it's the same one in the crop circle. When he saw it in 2012, he saw it at the same time I had the near-death experience, not near-death experience, the download experience. He encounters them again, and at that point, they're wearing hoods, and they're etheric beings, which is where we're starting to figure out what's actually going on here. I'm interviewing this alien here on Wednesday. There's 3 of them. They call themselves the beings. No faces, no nothing. They're the closest I've seen to my interpretation of how the universe works. They are really on, and now they want an interview with me, and I'm getting my vaccine on Monday. And if the Brazilian leader said you're going to turn into a crocodile, so if I turn into a crocodile, we'll call off the interview. But Wednesday, I'm going to interview these beings out of Great Britain. They're going to be there, and they want an interview, and I'm going to be asking them questions. So if anybody's got a question, you can send it to me, whatelsufo@gmail.com. What you want to ask them, I have an interview with them. Here's Lou Elizondo's even come out and made this disclosure. He said, "I think it's important that we go down just a bit of that rabbit hole, because I'm not sure it's either or a binary solution, on world or off world. So maybe we just need to broaden our aperture a little bit about what these things could be." He's actually hinting it may not be what you think it is. And I've seen I've chased all the high level people, and they all make this same sort of indication that this thing may not be as physical as we think it is. It comes in and becomes physical. But as Kit Green said, we're trying to figure out, and he was the guy at the CIA Weird Desk, we're trying to figure out how does the phenomena pop in and pop out just as quickly. If there's interdimensional, then what does that say for the Big Bang Theory? Or I call it the dynamite theory. We had this big dynamite explosion, and all this matter got thrown out into outer space, and it randomly just coalesced and banged into each other and created this elaborate universe. If there's multi-dimensions, what does that say for the Big Bang Theory? It just basically says, yeah, we probably made that one up. Here's where we start to tie in consciousness. Jill Bolte Taylor was a neuroanatomist. It's the second most popular TED Talk. Stroke of Insight. You can see the TED Talk where she talks about 38 years old, has a left brain hemorrhage, shuts down her left brain, and she becomes one with the universe. Her right brain is running the show. She said, "We are energy beings connected to one another through consciousness of our right hemispheres as a human family." That is the number one message. I say the beings are giving the message of oneness. We are all one. We are all connected. It's all one thing. No time, no space, no physical universe. It's all just consciousness, one thing, and we're all connected. And unless you realize that, the world is done. You've got to realize we're all connected together. William Shakespeare. I used to hate William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare said, "All the world's a stage. All the men and women," and I would add, and aliens, "are but actors. They have their entrances and they have their exits, and each man plays many roles." Whitley Strieber, who was lecturing yesterday, Whitley Strieber this is one of the most revealing things I've every time, it just gives me shivers when I read this. Anne dies, she sends him a message. "I am no longer Anne, but I will always be Anne to you." That's critically important. I am no longer Anne. I have left the stage. But I will always be Anne to you. We are just playing a role. We're playing. And here's the key. I am not the actor on the stage. The ego wants you to believe you are the actor on the stage. I am not the actor. I am the stage. I am playing an actor on a stage. Big difference. We come in, we play a role, we go out. All the aliens, all the people, everybody is just a soul incarnating through a karmic, in and out, playing an actor. We are not the actor on the stage. That's the confusion we have, is that we suddenly believe we are actually the actor and there's nothing beyond us. We are just playing an actor on a stage. Even Albert Einstein talked about this. Albert Einstein wrote this: "A human being is a part of the whole, called by us as the universe. a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. We are all connected. We are all one. This is the thing I mentioned already. This is what Kit Green said. He was asked by Jim Peniston. He said actually, depending what you see is determined by your experience, that people will see different things. And there's a lot of stories about this where people see different things. Now we get to the portal thing. And this comes into this thing. I got dragged into this, like everything else in the UFO field. I didn't intend to do this. I just get sort of dragged down one rabbit hole and another rabbit hole. And you start to think that maybe this is all sort of intentional. It was all planned. So portals is a key thing. When I look at all the I've chased the presidents, the high level intelligence people. And what I would say to conclude this thing, if we don't get through the end of this thing, is that when I look at it, all the stuff about anti-gravity, all that kind of stuff, that's not, Ron Pandolfi called it techno scam. And I think that may be true. We don't have any of that. But when I look at the portal thing and I trace all the stories about portals back, high level people, there always seems to be some sort of indication that yes, we may understand that there is some sort of portal technology and we may actually be in possession of a portal. And so that's where I go with this. I've gotten new stuff, but 95% of the stuff I've got is detailed in a book called Portals and UFOs at Mount Shasta, where I go through the whole thing. And this deals with a group called Mission Rama. The people that run the groups, they don't want to be associated with Mission Rama. They say, we're not Mission Rama, but they're using Mission Rama protocols, which was started in 1974. Two brothers in Peru who got this contact experience where they were actually going on crafts, and they had this protocol where they can not only, when they have a CE5, they can only tell you where it's going to happen. They can tell you, as what happened to me in 2017, they said at 9:33 it's going to fly over. At 9:33 this thing started to flash over my head. You talk about going down the rabbit hole. When they predicted, two people predicted when it would happen to the minute, I was just shocked. But they called them Zendras. So we call them portals, they call them Zendras, and there's been a number. This was the being that sent me a message on the way to Mount Shasta. I didn't want to go. I just went there because my associate was helping me, and I said, okay, I'll go meditate on a mountain for you. And I got this being and said, we know you're coming. His name is Terrell, and this is where this event starts going towards 2020. So he's there. There's an event in 2014, 2015, where they actually open a Zendra, and he's in this Zendra. And they take 7 people into the Zendra. I interview all these people. In fact, this morning I just posted one of the interviews on my Paranormal UFO Consciousness podcast. And with some of the witnesses were inside this Zendra. They take 7 people in at a time, and they're standing there, and this flesh and blood being is standing there, and everybody's getting a different message, and fascinating stuff. So they open this thing. It's like an interdimensional portal. They lower their vibration, and the Mission Rama protocols have people doing mantras and oming where you raise your vibration, and they meet in the middle, and this thing opens up in the forest. This lighted thing ends up, and people can go in this, and they have this encounter. So it happened 2014, 2015. And that's in the book, the portals at Mount Shasta. I tell what happened. It's a long story, but so it happens in 2014, 2015. One of the translator in the 2015 event, who shouldn't have been in the Zendra, they only take 7. He was an interpreter or a translator. He went in and he saw Terrell, and it's this whole deal with the what do you call it? The hitchhiker phenomena, where he'd never seen a UFO, he'd never seen an alien, nothing. He goes home, and this thing follows him home, and he sees Terrell, this 10-foot tall being, at birthday parties. He says weird stuff going on with his car. The wipers are going, and the car is turned off, and just really weird stuff. And he ends up being through this 5 years from 2015 to 2020, and this is the second guy, so Adama, and all the Mission Rama stuff is all this sort of like 1950 type aliens, like, beautiful aliens. I defy anybody to see. There's 25,000 Mission Rama people around the world, and they have a lot of experiences. I defy anybody to show me a gray or a reptilian. And that's the whole idea, is that you are part of what you're manifesting. This is all they get, is this sort of ascended master type thing. So this is Adama, who said, and in July The translator went on Toronto, and he said Adama said he would appear at Mount Shasta, and they want 111 people. And because of COVID, they didn't get 111 people, but a bunch of people went there. And I didn't know until actually about a month ago that this guy actually appeared. So this is a story that is the most dramatic story I've ever seen. This is Mount Shasta. This is an overhead view of Mount Shasta. They call it sand flats. It's up at 4,000 feet up on the mountain, and you'll see this open area. And where the two roads join there, where the mark is, if you go directly across the field, that's where the 2014-2015 Zendros opened. And in 2020, I'm not 100% sure where they were. There was 9 people, and I think they're just above the red mark on the screen. So this is give you an idea of where this is. It's extremely cold at night, and here's Ron Pandolfi. This is the head CIA guy talking about portals. We've actually got this on video, but the video is not very good. And the guy on his left is a guy named John Sillison, who actually is sort of in control of this portal thing. And they keep indicating that they have one of these things. And here's what Ron says, and he's on a cruise ship in Panama, and he's basically talking. I get it, he's furious that I pulled this off his wife's YouTube channel. But here, yeah, I've got the audio, but here's what he basically says. And you got to remember, this is the guy that may brief Trump and Biden. This may be the guy, the head guy. For thousands of years, people have speculated about what it's like to enter the entrance to another world. Now we are on the cusp of a breakthrough where the door is about to open. In John, he's talking about the guy sitting beside him. In John's next adventure to the desert, he will be joined by a couple of people here, which will bring them in through the doorway into the next world and then back. Now, that's the only time he's ever been caught on camera, and he's talking portal, no doubt about it. He's talking portal type stuff. And I talked to one of his associates about this 2020 thing, and they said it's about time this got made public, and they wanted me to do a TV show. But when people heard that the CIA may have been involved, we didn't think we could get the witnesses to go along with this. They want a TV show done on this 2020 event. This is what Ron said in 2015. Again, this is stuff that he puts up and nobody ever reads it. And I go back, why look for the visitors when we are in their home? Why look for assistance from those who created the problem? The pathway is not defined by the existing doorway. Open a new door, climb a new stairway, step into a new dimension. The vectors are pointing from the past along established pathways. They cannot be stopped, but they can be bent. Drop a black hole and let the new world begin. He keeps indicating that there's this portal thing, that this is the key. Here's one message that he sent. My wife does have a time machine of sorts. And there's always this claim that his wife comes from the other side, that there's this portal thing and that this is involved. And why would he keep telling these stories? And I pick them up. He doesn't tell them publicly. I hear them from people around him, and he's been telling this kind of stuff, indicates that there may be some truth to this. This is the portal opening at Mount Skinwalker. Everybody knows the story. The thing opened up and this being crawled out of the portal. And John Alexander said in an interview with Gaia, he was in the parking lot leaving, and the guy kept asking questions about UFOs, and he got very upset. And he said, look, it's not about the UFOs. It's about the portals. He's the guy that ran Bob Bigelow's program for NIDS. He was the general manager guy, moved to Las Vegas to run it. He would know some of the inside stuff that Bigelow and these guys at Skinwalker Ranch knew. He said it's all about the portals. I say it's about the portals as well. Here's Brandon Fugel, who owns the Skinwalker Ranch right now. And he talking about Davis. So Dr. Eric Davis, was the assistant for Hal Puthoff, talked about this portal opening up. And he said, I agree with Davis. We have observed phenomena during our current investigation supporting the theory of wormholes and portals to other worlds, dimensions existing on Skinwalker Ranch. And if portals and this kind of stuff exists, the world is not what you think it is. If we can actually go into a different dimension, a different reality, then we've got a lot to learn. We've been handed a very key part of how the universe works. This Kit Green talking. This is the core story that the beings came. I'm going to leave that. Here's these beings. Okay, this is a film that someone got. I don't know if this is a hoax film or this is a film, and this ties into what happened in 2020. So I'm going to go quickly. I'm just going to go briefly over the 2020 thing happened. We still have we've interviewed 3 of the 9 witnesses. We still like to interview the rest of them. The hitchhiker guy. We need to do some analysis on this video that we've got. So here we go. The beings look like this thing here. This is Mount Shasta, California. Here's the overhead view. They use drones. These people are pretty sophisticated. These guys that are running these Mission Rama events, they have a drone. This is the night the thing came over my head. You see that round circle of chairs there. I was on the north side of that, and that's when this thing came over my head. So this is the sand flats right below the drone, and that's to give you an idea of where this event occurred. I think it occurred on the right-hand side. There's an open area on the right-hand side, just above the tree line there. I think that's where this event took place. So there's a bunch of events. There's one happens at the door. I'm not going to talk about that. Then they have the event that happens. They're doing a thing. They're in a circle thing. So this is this open area, and they're doing what's called the rose ceremony. So they cut up these things like roses, and they all lie. It looks really weird. They're all lying on the ground, and they have these roses. And this woman is walking around in Spanish, and she's doing this, what they call the rose ceremony. They have all these protocols like mantras and oming, and they have all these things that they try to raise vibration for a couple of days to make these contacts. So they're doing this rose thing. People have all these roses, and they're in the woman, this Heidi is the main woman in the middle. She's got a cell phone camera, and she asked for permission from Adama. Can we film? And he says, yes, you can film. So she's zooming around, and as I end this thing in a minute, you're going to see the video. I'm going to show you the actual video where I take out. It's 37 seconds between the two beings, and I take out part. But she's filming, and when the film comes back, they know something may be on the film, and what they do is they have all these flares, lens flares, on the camera, and they all excited. And they go, oh, but they're shooting right into the sun at one point of the film. And they showed it to my friend Jan Yonder in Chicago, and Jan says, no, those are lens flares, but what is this? So here's what it is. You see it, they're filming around, and you see on the edge of the forest there, you see this white being. Looks like a woman in like a gown. And if you take close-up looks, this is where we got to do this blur photographing stuff and take a close look at these images. On the bottom, the gown or whatever the thing is on the bottom is heavily lit up. It's very bright on the bottom. And you'll see there's a shadow on the tree. In the next shot, you're going to see the shadow has disappeared. And in front of the tree, and you may not see this very well, this is why we need this to blur stuff. In front of the tree, you see what appears to me, I call it the force. I saw it and I said, that's the force. This is like a portal. It's right in front of the tree. You can see it in sort of in the close-up images. So this is how it starts. This is the number 1 second of the film as she starts to film around. She films around the film, and she comes back 37 seconds later. And here's a close-up of it. You can see the bottom is sort of lit up. It's clearer in some photographs. And you can see this shadow against the thing. And there's all sorts of weird stuff up in the tree as well. But the analysis hasn't been done on it. So here again, now you see the second one. This is 37 seconds later, and you can see the being has moved now from the right tree to the left tree. And if you zoom in front of the tree, you'll see that swirly portal thing is now a square. I measured it. It's completely square. It's no longer a circle thing. It's a square thing, almost indicating that this may be some sort of portal type thing that has come through. Here is another one. The thing actually turns in the video. You can actually see it turn. It's very sort of sharp as if it's on the side, and then it turns towards the camera, and you see it sort of expands out like it's facing the camera. Here's 2 images. One from the initial 1 second, 37 seconds later. You can see the being has moved from one side to the other, and in the one there's a shadow, and the other one there's no shadow. And I'll leave that. And you can see here it's very, very, very wide. In some spots, it's very, very thin, as if it's you're seeing the side profile of it. And here's the hitchhiker. We haven't, again, this guy, I don't think he ever had any experiences. He left that event in last August, and this thing's around him all the time. This is one of the photographs that he took in his house. And I've got this with orbs. I mean, I've got piles and piles and piles of these things where orbs will appear, this misty stuff appears. So we're about to do I'm hopefully doing an interview with this guy very shortly. He seems to be the new hitchhiker that they've attracted, and it's following him around now. All this is in contact modalities, where I say it's just ability to get in the field. And here's my new consciousness podcast, Paranormal UFO Consciousness Podcast. I'll go every day until I can do no more, but it's running every day. And now let me show you the video, and then we'll take questions here. This is the video I'll try to play it twice. This is the video, so you can see, and it's super slow motion. So you can see the being is on on the left tree, and she's panning around, and then I cut out a part and she pans back. And it's on the other tree now. And there's a shadow in front of on the tree. And I think we have about 4 seconds of video, but it's a matter of, and you got to remember, it's a COVID protocol. So there was really nobody on the mountain except for these people. You need a permit to get in there. Okay, now I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to tell you the grand finale to this whole thing that made me think this was the best story I'd ever seen. That later that night, there are 9 people. Most of the people have gone down the mountain into the town, and they're in hotels and motels. These people are celebrating a birthday. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. They're on that sand flat area, and they are celebrating this birthday. And all of a sudden, Heidi says, "They're here." And all the experiences, you hear these stories. They're here. You can pick up the vibration. They're here. And everybody said, "How do you know they're here?" They're here. I know they're here. And this thing lights up in the forest. And this is like the typical Zendra. It lights up in the middle of the night. And so they said, "No, that's just somebody in the forest. That's just somebody camping." No. She said, "They're here." So she said, and she gets this telepathic message, said, come to the forest. But you got to realize it is pitch dark. You could break your leg walking across that field. It is pitch. You can't see your hand in front of your face. So he said, "No, we're scared. We don't want to come across. We don't want to come there." And so they said, "Oh, okay. Well, then we'll come there." And they said the sound was like a herd of elephants coming across the field. And these beings appeared, and they're etheric beings. This is the idea. We are just human. We're not human beings. They're not aliens. We're etheric beings playing roles on stage. So these etheric beings, and Adama is there. She said, "I could recognize Adama," and these people are there, and they get scared. So they hold hands. They're in this circle of 9 people. They hold hands, and suddenly they're being levitated into the air. And we did an interview with 3 of them. They talk about this, and they are definitely in a Zendra, because I have, if you listen to my podcast, I have a 747 airline pilot, and he talks about being in a Zendra. And when you're in the Zendra, it sounds like you're underwater when you talk. And that's what they described. They said it was really weird. We're levitated up into the air. We have no sense of time and space. We don't know how long. The one guy thought it may have lasted 2 hours. They sounded like they started to ohm. They started to ohm, and then the beings started to ohm. And I said at one point, I thought there was 5 or 6 of them or whatever, tall ones, short ones. And I said to one guy, I said, "Well, how many were there?" He said, "A couple hundred." I said, "There was a couple hundred?" He said, "Yeah, as many as there were trees." How many beings were around these people, levitated into the air. And we have the witnesses. It's just a matter of doing the interviews with them. They really didn't want to become public, but I said, this is the best story. And they want a message. They have a message. Adama did deliver a message. I said, they want the message out. That's why they did this weird thing. So 9 people levitated in the air, may have been for up to 2 hours, and hundreds of etheric beings in around them. And then they went to bed. They went to the tents, and in the tents, they said they could hear the beings moving around. They could see shadows, and I'll leave it at that. We can go to questions.
Oh, Mark seems to have been gone. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds and see if anybody else joins us. I'm sure they will. That was very fascinating talk. Where you were saying that there was a shadow, I almost thought that it was almost another person, because it seemed so dense. It didn't seem like a shadow to me.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like I'm not a photo. I got a photo, but he didn't really do anything. You need the blur stuff. You need people who are, because there's about 3 seconds of video, and of course it's shot up. It's not going to be super high end,
right?
But you need to do analysis, especially this thing in front of the tree, which we haven't been able to do. But the photo, because they didn't really realize, none of the people realized the thing was standing there until someone picked it up. But the more you look at it, the more weird things there are in. That's the key thing, was that they had asked to film, so everybody expected something to appear on indication that they should be shooting the film.
Right. Well, I didn't feel scared about it. I felt actually a sense of peace with it there. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's
what I felt about it.
That's the thing with the Mission Rama thing, is that's why I say you have to look at who the people are who are experiencing. the idea that if you're in fear, you're going to see a gray. That's why I say with the mix, it's all 100% these ascended masters. It's all, there's this, you know, God taught, very, very religious in nature. They don't have any of these other experiences. So that's, none of them are really scared about this kind of stuff. They're sort of religious experience, and it's almost all Latinos. That's the problem with trying to track this. There's I think 45 witnesses, but everybody speaks Spanish. There's like need a translator to do any interviews with these people, and a lot of them really don't want to be public. They're very ordinary people. Keep encouraging them. Well, why do you think they want you to say something? So it's the onus is on you to deliver the message.
Yeah. Well, to me, I thought it was beautiful. I thought the image was beautiful. So.
Yeah. Wow.
So we have a couple questions coming in chat. Nobody wants to, I guess, come up on video. Mavis wants to know how she can open the portal that's in her house. I was told I was a gatekeeper.
Well, if it's in your house, they meditation. You have to. When I wrote in contact modalities, I talk about all contact modalities are the same thing. Like you can talk about, like Annie used to talk about, shut down Mr. Stupid. That you have to shut down. Left brain is causing noise in the signal, and you have to shut the left brain down, rip the veil to get on the other side. So I would say whatever paranormal stuff you need is using meditation. That's not quieting the brain down. That's quieting the little voice in the left brain. Like Jill Bolte Taylor talked about her left brain hemorrhage, one with the universe. And this is a neuroanatomist from Harvard where she said that the voice turned off. It was like gone, absolutely. And there was no fear whatsoever for 7 weeks in her head. There was nothing. All that left brain stuff was shut down. So I would say the way that you interact with anything would be this idea where you've got to separate left brain, shut it down, and make contact. So I've heard the portal things all over the place, and I just recently, I know the Mission Rama is a little bit different. It's they're opening the portal, like they described. People in 1415 described that there was these little beings like little elves that were running around hiding behind trees and peeking, and that they were holding iPads, and these were engineers, that they needed these engineers to open these iPad things. So in this case, it's the beings that open it. The same as I heard with the through this CIA contact thing was the fact that in order to get through, you need permission from the other side. You can't just open the portal and walk through. You need the other side to open the portal as well, and they don't allow you in. That's the whole deal, is unless you're into oneness, unless they're not going to let any crazy people in here. They're right. That's what people always forget, is that they are in control of everything. Jim Semivan said that. I can tell that story. Jim Semivan, who was the of TTSA, was once asked who's running. They wanted to know, like, who in the government is running. He said they are, and that's what you got to remember, is the portal is controlled by the other side. If you're using the right protocols and you go with the right attitude, you are not getting through. They're not going to allow you through. I see a question here? I can answer this one. 3D flesh and blood people go through the portal. The stuff that his wife was putting out was that, yes, go in, but you change into something else when you're on the other side. So the impression, and again, I'm just following these rumors that there was this in the desert. You see Ron was talking about next time John, there's this rumored story that they had this portal in the desert, that the government actually has this portal. It can open and you can go through this thing. And so, yeah, you can, from that impression, you can the other side, but you do not stay the same. It's the same as when the beings come across, they say, when we come into your world, we take on a body our body. They are etheric beings. They're all etheric beings. So are we. They're pretending to be aliens. We're all etheric beings. And so multi-dimensional world, you will be an etheric being. You will not be the same person. It's not like a sort of walk around. Although the Mission Rama people talk about going to Ganymede, planet Apu, which is all these beings that they deal with come from the planet Apu, and they've got groups all around the world, and they always talk about Ganymede. And Ricardo Gonzalez has claimed that he was taken and taken onto their planet, and you have these happen in the portals. The one guy, a shaman in America, talked about Sixto Paz was the guy that invented this thing, who started this thing. 70s in Peru. The Sixto Paz went into they have different types of Zendras, and the one was it's only about a couple inches, but it's 12 feet by 15, a rainbow, and that Sixto Paz would walk into the Zendra and he would disappear. You could see him disappearing into the Zendra, quarter-inch thick, and that 9 hours later he came out of the Zendra with 5 days worth of. That is very reminiscent to the whole story with Travis Walton, that Travis Walton came back 5 days, when in fact in the Zendra thing he'd only been gone for 9 hours, and they stood there and waited. The Zendra disappeared, and 9 hours later and Sixto come back out of the Zendra. So I think these are important things to watch. They have, but when they do, they start to tell you something very important about the fact that we've got something wrong. It is not what you think it is. We're sort of living in 1492, where we think the world is flat and the sun goes around the earth. And described to me was, you got a bunch of wrong blocks. You think all the blocks you've got are right. They're not. Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with information that you use to create the problem. If you've got the, not going to solve the problem. You've got to take the anomalies that happen in the world. Things they're telling you something's wrong, and you figure out what you're going to get a block that will straighten it out. James, who is the head of American psychology, said, you think you're thinking, you're actually prejudices. And that's the thing, is until we look at the paranormal phenomena and realize that the paranormal phenomena it's giving us a message, it's teaching us something. If weird paranormal phenomena, then you're never going to. It's through the anomalies that we discover things, that we get patents, that we have new inventions. It's the weird things that tell us you've got something wrong here. Closer look, what are you really looking at?
Hi, Grant. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I just want to thank you so much for your share today. I just got so much joy out of it. For me, on my spiritual path, I just feel like I'm on a spiritual journey. But where do you feel you're at with all of this? I mean, obviously, you've grown more spiritually as a result of it, if you're focusing on oneness.
Absolutely. I mean, the way I look at it, when you look back on your life, and I can ask you as I would ask anybody else, do you think you're on a mission? And I'll ask people, like, you had this plans. Let me ask you what. Let me ask you. You think you're on a mission? Yeah, I'm on a mission. Or they'll say, mission, but I really don't know what it is. And that's the whole idea. Is I was given a download in 2017. It said, if the world's made out of nuts and bolts, that's one world with certain rules. Since that's a completely different world. If it's one life, one world with certain rules and regulations, but if it's multiple lives, then everything changes. Key things we got to remember, it's multiple lives, that we are coming in wheel thing, and we're playing roles. We come to learn things. So that's the way I've come through my life. As I was supposed to be a minister when I thought I was going to be a minister, and then I pulled out and I didn't want to do this kind of stuff. And I was sort of lost when I had my UFO experience. I didn't know what it was, but it as a mission thing, that I think that a lot of the stuff happened to me was not random. That I started looking back and I go, oh, that's why that happened. So that's what I think I would give the advice to people, is you've got to be open to and go with your senses, that you may be on yourself, or your spirit guides, or whoever is on the other side is giving you directions, and you can pick up on the and go in the right direction. And that's where synchronicities come from. When you start having synchronicities, that's an indication by whoever on the other side that you're keep moving. So to me, it's all this mission thing. And go along, the weirder it gets. And at this point, there's so much material coming that I just absolutely do not do the research. There's just the material. It's almost like a veil. It's like the UFO disclosure with the government stuff. You see it starting to open, where I think they're basically trying to tell us, this. And when you see Lou Elizondo come out a couple of days ago and say it may not be this world, we should take a look. He's basically saying, hey, it may be multi-dimensional, it may be something. And the end of the conclusion to that is, I think, knows an awful lot less than what people think it knows. It knows, yeah, we have crafts that they have actually dropped on purpose. We have hardware, they're dropping these little to get our attention and stuff like that. But in terms of understanding what's going on, this phenomena is running. When you see these events that happen with the U.S. Navy, when you have the one that happened off the coast of Florida, very, very close to the plane. That, if you've studied psychedelics, you know exactly what that is. That is a surrender. That the idea in life is you have to surrender. As long as your ego is in charge and you're fighting, you're going to have a rough battle. The idea is to surrender and by your feeling and take messages from the other side. And so that's why they came so close to the plane. Surrender. We're running the show here, and we're just and if you think you're running it, that's what I would say to people. I've done some podcasts on this where I say, if the government thinks, make sure your will is done, make sure your life insurance is paid up, because it's going to be a rough for people. This phenomena is way. We understand UFOs exist, but beyond that, we really don't know how they're getting here, how they're coming in, and we starting to realize it's not a big giant spaceship that's spent 1,000 years flying across the universe. Spirit release, yeah. This is why I see a question on spirit release. Let me answer that, because that's important. You see these across UFOs and other spiritual things. For example, first let me go UFOs. We talked about all the people that fly the craft. A bunch of these people that fly the craft. Forrest flew the craft, and it's society is there, and so we have. And the other parallel is that a lot of UFO experiencers will tell you. So he was flying the craft to say, Chris, okay, tell me how you fly a craft. Start from the beginning. And he said, I go in the craft, shape thing, and I go inside, and it's huge. It's like massive inside, and people will all describe this like it's inside a stadium. It's a normal size, like 20-foot craft. You go inside, it's the size of a football stadium inside. When I have a friend, his name is Ron Johnson, who into the spirit world. He's with his dead mother in the spirit world. He goes to this thing. It looks like a temple. He's a Mormon guy. They take him to this thing. It looks like a. His mother says, when you die, you're going to come here and you're going to building with us. And he said, when I went into this building, it was 10 times the size inside as it was outside. That's what they say about the UFO stuff. That's exactly the same. So the question is he having a experience? Is he having a near-death experience? Is he having a UFO? When you start to look, you see all these crossovers. Or the other big crossover that if you see UFO cover-up live, it was done in 1988. Falcon guy says, the most amazing thing I saw in the entire time that I worked in the government was the aliens had this crystal. And so I remember, because I was in this in the 1980s following this, that the rumor was they had this crystal. They could show you the crucifixion of Jesus Christ on this. They show the crystal at a certain angle. If you study Michael Newton, you'll see people talking about, open this book and there's a crystal in there. And you look at it at a certain angle and you can see, and you plan your future life based upon looking at this crystal. And then Ron Johnson says, I'm in a temple building with my mother, and she takes me down to the far end of this room, and here's this table out of the table. And he said, everybody gets a crystal when they die, and it's and stuff like that. And he said, his crystal wasn't there. She said, your crystal won't come until you die. But he saw the crystal of his dog, and he goes, oh, crystal of his dog, and he never knew what happened to his dog. And he looked at the angle, and he could see that his dog was shot by the neighbor. So you see these parallels. Phenomena, I believe, is the same sort of thing. It's just a different spin to it. It's a different way. So oh, don't put me in with the channelers. The channelers are full of it. I'm not a channeler. And start to parse it. And Ray Hernandez, who came up with the contact modality idea, was told by the beings, you got to quit. It's all the same thing. Consciousness is in the middle. And if you're there's future, there are people who are really able to read the future. There are people who are able to play music. There are musical prodigies, modalities. And you may be good at the modality, but it's breaking off the left brain analytical mind that keeps you in the physical world, popping in there, grabbing material, bringing it back. And that's where the musicians are very right-brained. Most major musicians cannot read and write music. That's left-brain music. They are just waiting for inspiration to come, and they're in the field, and all the best songs of all times have come, and these instantaneous downloads and stuff. It's coming out of the field. It's the ability. Musicians can do it. Shut down the left brain, the right female brain, and that comes to the final message that I would say is that we are being dominated by the left brain, me versus you, had this religious view, and as long as that continues, the separation idea, we're gone. The message they want is to move to the right brain. It's all one thing. You're all connected. Whatever you do yourself, whatever, or as Jesus said, whatever you've done unto the least of these, my brothers, you've done unto me. We're all connected. You do to the everything. You and that's why they came after the detonation of the atomic bomb, because the whole universe is like a bell. When you detonate an atomic bomb at one corner of the bell, the whole bell rings. Everybody knew what we'd done, and they've come and they realized the verge of destroying ourselves. We're in me versus you, rape, pillage, kill, and steal. Whoever's got the most toys when they die win. And they're telling us it's all one thing. You come in to learn, leave, you're going to go back and you're going to be whatever it was that you had the most problem with in this world. We're all connected. Even the COVID thing, it's the proof you're all connected. It's all there is no separation. And when you I would say all that is considered to be evil in the modern based upon one thing and one thing only, the mistaken belief in separation. And all is the belief in oneness. When you believe that we are all one, you will do the right thing. And I'll leave it at that.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to make some comment because about the gender thing. Yes, I'm from Japan. It is midnight, but last night I don't know why I was thinking about Zendra, and then like repeating the word Zendra. I came to know about the Zendra a few years ago, and then till yesterday I forgot about it. But suddenly yesterday came into my mind and repeated. So I thought like something connected to this your presentation. It was interesting. So I just wanted to share.
Yes, everything is. That's the thing. Everything's connected. Yeah, there's no synchronicity. There's no sort of accidents. If you look at, it's interesting. Have you been to Mount Shasta, or you do this kind of stuff? She's gone. Okay. Law of one. Yeah, you hear this thing about the law of one. Bashar. The one are the all. A guy by the name of Brett Oldham he said to the tall gray alien who he had hatred for, he had no use for this guy. He said, let me ask you, what's your concept of God? He said, the tall gray said to him, we are one, who is all. And Brett said, I was so shocked I had to sit down floored when he said this. You see this message over and over and over, this oneness message. All is one. It's this key that we're all intricately connected. You take the people who do the stuff in the Sting, does the ayahuasca, and everything was conscious, alive, and one. And he said, I saw this little flower, this little and then he said, that's my brother. And that's the concept, is we're all connected. That when you break near-death experience, we'll have the oneness experience. They realize everything's connected, everything's alive, everything's conscious. That's the bottom line, and we're starting to figure it out. Hopefully we figure it out before we blow the place up. Okay.
Hi, Grant. Can you hear me?
We are one. Yeah.
Hey, kind of just get your thoughts on the upcoming government report. It's supposed to be out in June about the UAPs, UFOs. I'm thinking my thoughts are that it's probably just a way to brainwash the general public into thinking they're still a threat. But I know that it's not going to be a threat. So I was just wondering, what do you think about the report that's supposed to be coming up? Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just guessing. I mean, Lou Elizondo's latest interview he did was talking about that, and that's where he dropped that it may not be as dualistic as people think it is, off-world, on-world, because as soon as she brings up the off-world, on-world, so I think what they're going to say is more of the same. Because if you look at the Donald Trump talks, Navy came in and showed him these videos, the Nimitz video, and probably better videos than we've seen. And then he said, yeah, they're interesting. I still don't believe it. Now, if he had known that they had this technology where flying to others, he never would have said that. That indicates that, yes, they exist. Yes, they know they're all over the place. They're interacting with the military. They're shutting themselves, which is great. They should win the Nobel Prize for that. That we can't do anything. What we're really going to hear them say is do anything, because if you're the president or the powerful U.S. military, you're not really going to say, what I say they're doing, the military, like Elizondo, they're doing this threat thing. Because if you look at the Obama administration, Podesta and Leslie Kean were pushing it, they were saying, oh, it's a threat to airline traffic. And I guess everybody just sort of laughed and said, here. And so now they've changed it, and it's like a threat to the States. It's, we got to do something about this. We need billions. And that's why Ron calls it a techno scam, that we're going to convince people that we need this stuff. And unless you say it's a threat, you're not going to give you anything unless you say it's a threat. So they use this examples like, I grabbed my daughter and took her on board a ship and touched her, kidnapping and assault. And I say, well, who's a threat? Atomic bomb on your daughters or on my kid or whatever, or firebomb. I mean, as Bashar was asked one time by Linda Howe, who's the race that we need to be afraid of? You. And she said, me personally? The race. You are, and that's the Pogo cartoon. We met the enemy and he is us. There is no threat. They're trying to do a message thing, and the atomic bombs and putting people in cages, of horrible things. So I say to people, if you think they're evil aliens, when they drop the first atomic bomb, then I may sign it.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to
ask you, like,
for myself personally, I've always felt that I came in with the mission. And I have to say, a few weeks ago, I realized that like my goal is always to move into the love energy. Like I did the UFO stuff years ago, and I was grateful for it, but I felt mine is more about love. But when I said to the beings, I just said to them, I said, I realized that, because sometimes when you're dealing with lower level people, what they have a tendency to do is when they know that you've come here to assist, their perception of that is exploitive to a certain degree. So what I had said to the higher light beings, I said, I can't be anything other than my spiritual self. I will continue to function in this way. My life is that. I said, but now I want it to be my choice instead of something that I feel obligated to do. That's just a piece of where I'm at right now. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be anything different, but I don't want it to feel like an obligation at this point. I want it to feel like something that I'm choosing to do at this point.
Yeah, I appreciate the mission, because we need people like you and all raise the vibration. There's this idea that once you get % or whatever, then it sort of flips where that's what it's about. It's no different than African American rights or gay rights or anything like that. It moved along, and there was a lot of bad things, and bad movies and bad jokes and whatever, and then suddenly it gets to a point where that already. It's like when the UFO thing was released in the New York Times, everybody, yeah, I knew it was UFOs. Suddenly it's like and we moved there. You mentioned the love thing. The free service and experiencers who claimed that they had had interaction with a non said 54% of them, even in the survey, that is, love is the basis of the universe. But love, though, is a little bit different, was that the universe is still independent. It's like a clock and own thing. So it doesn't mean that I think some people get aliens and stuff. It's sort of like we still have things that for because we are sort of in charge, and that there are rules. Play by the rules, it works out well. If you don't play by the rules, it doesn't work out well. It's not like God is here to us or aliens are here to rescue us. They can actually, the alien that talked to Canadians had said that. They said if there's we can stop a nuclear exchange. We could take the moon in front of the entire world, split it in half, and put it back together, and might prove that we could save the world. But other than that, we are going to race to stew in its own juices. So it's up to you and I and other people to raise the consciousness, because the world, you only get asked one question. And the question, according to Michael Newton, people all got asked and they all had the same answer, was the question you're asked is, how did it work out? Because you put the players on the stage, worked all this kind of stuff, and you're not going to be able to bring up law, the dog ate my homework, Hillary Clinton's emails. They're going to go, time out, time out. This is you. You and I have come in, so all we have to worry about is if a reincarnation is a fact, you and I the world to do something. All we got to do is figure out what it is we came in to do, because we're going to get asked how to work when we leave. What anybody else is doing, it's got nothing to do with us. We are only here to do what we came here to do. And so if there's no more questions, Forrest. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Back in 1962, I saw an object that looked very similar to what you displayed in your presentation. It had windows, and the interesting part about it was,
okay,
if you know the time frame, this was in the early. I had a cousin who was involved in clandestine military activities. He was one of the original SEALs. They were called paradivers at the time, and the mission was aborted. It was about a year after the failed Bay of Pigs. It would have resolved the issue in Cuba. The reason they didn't do it, because they found out from the spy plane photos there were over 1,000 Russian troops, and they didn't have time to take names and addresses. It would have been probably detrimental. But the point I'm making is that this object was very large. I saw it from a distance of about half a mile. It was above a friend of mine's house. She lived on a hill in the west part of Baldwin Hills near Culver City in LA area. It was at least 150 feet in diameter, and one point, because of the street light, it was at night, and I was actually visiting a girlfriend who was babysitting, looking through the window, and she noticed some kind of a glare, and I went to inspect it from a distance. And it was just interesting because you can almost see a spinning motion, but you could see figures in the windows like what you showed in your presentation. The ironic part about it is that, of course, it was at night, so they didn't want a lot of attention, but this was probably maybe 3 months before we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it's very interesting time-wise with and I believe what you've been saying with regard to the nuclear issues. I mean, it's obvious they want to stop it because of the potential catastrophic effect.
Yeah. The same effect happened when they shut down the Malmstrom. That happened a couple of weeks before the planes were shot down that started the 6-day war between Israel and so you do have these things. And I'll tell you a story you may not have heard. There was the Cubans. You mentioned the Cubans. The Cubans had a UFO space. This is in the Stanton Friedman files. And the U.S. intelligence, the Navy people were monitoring all the Russian communications in Florida. The 2 planes are coming in. They tell back off, and it keeps coming. And they give a shoot down order, and the pilot in the back plane, the wingman guy is describing this. Just as it went to fire, he said the plane just disintegrated. He's gone. And the U.S. intelligence is listening. That's why I say to people, if you think we're going to be shooting these things down, to lose a lot of people, because this phenomena is actually running the show. I saw an interesting question here I probably want to quickly ask. Can UFOs impersonate planes? Absolutely. People always ask about the low-flying helicopters. You know, experiencers have this low-flying helicopter comes up. So I started looking at people's photographs. Tony Bintz in England has a number of them. Yeah, flying helicopters close enough that you can see the guy in the helicopter and stuff like this over London, and his have all got UFO. And people started sending me all these low-flying helicopters with UFOs in the photograph. You have a low-flying helicopter after a UFO experience that doesn't have a UFO in it? Think, is this actually a helicopter or is this something else? Because a lot of them, if you look at your photo, you may even know, have UFOs in. UFOs can shape whatever they want. They can appear as, and that's the whole idea, is that you can take on whatever body, rabbits, deer. There was one story told, thing where he pretended to be a military guy, and then the guy said, you haven't got the right uniform on, and he said instantaneously into the right uniform, into the right patches or whatever it was. Yeah, they absolutely are running the show, and you got to remember, it's such a physical thing. It's a thing where we all can do this kind of stuff. Everybody can take on this kind of stuff, and to realize that consciousness is primary. That as I said with this blindfold stuff, our eyes are not. There's we're making all sorts of bad questions or assumptions about what's going on. That it's a little bit normal world. It starts to teach you that time may not exist. John Wheeler said there's no out there. If that's true, if there's no out there, and everything is inside yourself, you're going inside yourself. When you die, you go inside yourself. You're not going anywhere. And that is, everything is inside. Deepak Chopra says everything is an action inside consciousness. If that's just inside you and there's just one space, there's only one electron, all these quantum physics weird, then you got to realize the world is not what we think it is. It's about how things work. And the more we see of the UFO phenomenon and what they show us, the more we realize a lot of wrong blocks, that we're shuffling a bunch of blocks around that we're never going to get the answer to because we've got the wrong, we make all the wrong. Okay, so that, and thank you very much. And
hey, Grant, I have one question for you to end this thing. As far as the right brain, shifting our consciousness to the right brain and quieting the left brain, what is your recommendation for the best way to do that? Is it a type of meditation? If so, specifically what seems to work best? And or is there any technology that can help with that, like the binaural beat, Monroe Institute kind of stuff?
Wow, you're getting into a big, all sorts of modalities. The meditation thing, was told to do Vipassana meditation and a certain type of yoga. I can't remember what the name of the yoga was, but it was Vipassana. And that is, we've discovered this, that if you do a meditation and an action at the same time, it shuts down the parietal lobe, it shuts down one part, and you have these mystical experiences. Psychedelics will mystical experience, except you've got to be able to control it. They have a stuff done in Australia. I think it's the Center for the Mind. You have these savants who are able to, count the toothpicks, the Rain Man thing where the toothpicks fall on the floor. 36 as the toothpicks hit the floor, that kind of stuff. They can do that in Australia, where they magnetically for 15 minutes. And then they tell the guy how many dots on the screen. The guy gets 8 out of 20 right. And they got like 100 dots, and you got 1 second to look at the screen. The guy gets 8 out of 20 right. You can create these savant abilities. You can actually shut down the left brain, stimulating the left side of the brain. So there's all these different techniques, different things. Rama people use the mantra, they use the oming stuff. But again, a lot of it comes down to some people modality and not good at another modality. You got to figure out what works for you and work on. Get the book Contact Modalities, where it basically describes all the different modalities, and they're all doing the same thing. Best modality, mine works better than yours, and it's like, no, you may be really good at yours, but they're all basically this near-death experience, head injury, fevers, The idea of survival of the fittest came during a fever, and Darwin stole the idea. It was another guy had a fever. You see all these things. It's not even your thing. You get thrown into this by a high fever, whatever, where suddenly you're in the field and you with the universe and everything is love and universe and stuff. So there's different modalities to. I'm not sure one is really foolproof. I'd say psychedelics. If you're looking at one that you're absolutely going to realize that there's something outside the world, that's the one I would say. But meditation, a lot of people do. The problem with meditation is 20 or 30 years until you can hit this, nirvana state or whatever. The time, which is one of the problems we have, is that people are so busy trying to make a living that they aren't doing people who are actually doing it and learn from them.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, if there's no more questions, I say we take a 15-minute break before our next speaker comes on. So we'll see everybody on stage in 15 minutes. Thank you so much, Grant. As usual, so much information, it'll take me days to process. I do have a list of things. I'll reach out to you after the conference that I want to share with you and get your thoughts on. Anyway, wonderful seeing you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for telling your story about the flying the ship. That's when you see flying the ship and you realize you put your hand on a panel.
Yep.
Craft, whatever you think is what the craft does. You told the story. A lot of people told the story.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I have not told that story publicly yet, but I'm going to have to now. Yeah, just a brief synopsis of that now before we transition out of here. It was a dream that I had whenever I was a child. And I had it over and over again, maybe 3 or 4 times a month for a couple of years. And I would tell my mom this story. I was 2 years old. Now you try and imagine if you have kids, a 2-year-old saying, "Oh yeah, I had that dream again last night where I was asked to go to Earth and help straighten things out, and it started with me going inside this ship and flying it, and it was the same dream over and over again. And then by the time I was like 5 or 6, it faded, and I didn't have it anymore. But it was exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I know I can see in my mind right now what I was wearing, what the inside of the craft looked like, how I was sitting at the panel and put my hand on a dome-shaped thing, and then my mind linked with the craft in this dream. And all I had to do is think about where I wanted to go, and the ship would go there as if it were, a consciousness of itself. Very interesting stuff. So, yep, it's time for everybody to talk about these things. They're happening to lots and lots of people, and I've reiterated this before. Any of us that are involved in this phenomenon for a lifetime, that means we signed up for some stupid mission to because it's not just happening to us, it's happening to millions of people. Some of us have chose to open our mouths about it and write books about it, and it's just because we're extroverts, I guess, and we are willing to share what we've learned and what's happened to us, and I think it's really, really important. So
yeah, one thing to that's what I always point out to people: the Super Bowl. And I actually got a voice in my head when I said it. They said, "Of course, it's called the Super Bowl. What else would you want?" And that's what people got to realize, is that you and I are in this. We are playing in the Super Bowl. If you realize what's going on, this is that will ever hit the world. And we've been, living in a junkyard in Calcutta, trying to find food and stuff and something to sell for the moment. We got to play in the biggest story of all times, and we should say thank you every day that we are playing a key role, but with much is expected. When you get all this information, you have to tell people or whatever. This is the biggest story of all time, and I'm being in it with you and other people that we may even have had disagreement before we came to Earth. We're going to do this conference, and you're going to talk about that. And when you see it that way, then you start to appreciate that you have something to offer the world, and you should be out there trying raise the consciousness as much as you can, because you're in the
Well,
you're in
and
the big
I'd like
game.
to say this
You got
to
lucky
people,
enough to
because
play
you
in
and
this
I,
game.
you know, and all of our friends and colleagues, we've chosen to put ourselves in front of people, in front of the camera, and to try and spread the word far and wide to people that are willing to, you know, come and listen to us speak. So that's a certain role. But what I also want to point out is every last person that sits in a conference, attends today, and listens to this, they have the same role. It's no different. They're going to go out and they're going to tell people about it. It's going to change the way they think and act. And every person they tell, I was going to tell other people. And even though you think you're just sitting at a conference listening to information, you are in fact going to throw a drop of water into that pond, and that ripple is going to go out and touch every aspect of the pond. So every one of us that's here, not just you and I or the other presenters, are going to have an effect on the world. And the effect that each of the people listening has is far greater than us talking to a couple of hundred people about this. So you guys are all important out there, and whatever excites you and triggers, you know, you to feel and think things, by all means, share it with other people. Don't worry about whether they think you're crazy, because the consciousness is changing, and we're helping change it. All right. So thanks, everybody. See you in 10 minutes.